That's really good. I actually forgot to ask you, do you prefer Joanna or Joe?
Either. Just
Either's
don't call me
fine.
Joanne.
Okay, no, I will avoid that. I'll
The
avoid.
fatty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ben's Book Club. I can see everyone attending, everyone streaming in. Welcome. We have the wonderful Joanna, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. Joanna, are you feeling great? What are you drinking at the moment, may I
Uh,
ask?
I'm actually drinking water because
No,
is that have I got that wrong?
no, you've got that right. Hot water is wonderful,
Yeah,
hydrates us, sustains us.
yeah,
What
yeah,
a good person you are to be drinking water.
yeah. But I've got a bottle of red for later.
Oh, okay, to celebrate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ben's Book Club. I'm with the wonderful Joanna Jenkins. We're in the 14th month of Ben's Book Club. Really appreciate everybody being here, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're aiming at and the vibe generally of what we're doing. Introduce Jo, and then we'll start to talk about her wonderful book, How to Kill a Client. Um, to begin with, the main thing that we like to do with Ben's Book Club is actually involve all of you. So in the chat from New England Northwest, Chris is on it. So this is what I love to do is, if you don't mind, in the chat, just type, if you feel comfortable, type your name. Well, actually, I can see your name, but just type where you're from. And we've had some people from all over the world. We often get, is Ian here? Ian's from the UK. Yeah, there's Ian. Harvey Bay. So can you see all this, Joe? Look
Yeah,
at all
I
these
can.
people from
Yeah,
all over.
yeah, it's great.
Deb's from Brisbane. We should have got together and had a party all together. Laurie from Sydney. A few
Well,
people from Berlin visiting Sydney. Awesome. First
wow.
Ben's Book Club. That's great, Rebecca. Lovely to have you. There's a Brisbane contingent here. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Hometown represent. Gold Coast. Hello, everybody. It's so cool. One of the special things Joe and I were talking about this just before we went live. It's really cool that we get to all come together in this format and do this book club, even though we're all from these different places. And you guys get to be in your pajamas or wear whatever you want while you do this too, because we can't see you, which is another benefit. Launceston in Tasmania, that's awesome. Of course, Susan, hello. Um, yeah, awesome stuff. I'm just really proud of this club, and I'm really grateful for all of you to be with us today. As we talk with Jo, if you want to make a comment, if you want to type a question to her, please do it in the chat. I will try to read them out to Jo as we go through, because I think sometimes, in fact, I think most of the time, you guys are smarter than me with my questions. So I would like to hear from you. All right, let's talk to Jo. Joanna Jenkins grew up on a small farm in. You hear my dog? Oh my gosh, it's embarrassing. Sorry, guys. I'll start my wonderful intro again. Grew up on a small farm in country Queensland. After graduating from the University of Queensland in the late 80s with degrees in English, literature, and law, Joanna practiced as a solicitor in big law, including for many years as a partner of an international law firm. She now writes full-time, married with 3 sons. Joanna lives in Brisbane, and this book that we're talking about today, How to Kill a Client, is your very first book. So let's all, I guess I can only be the one on audio. Yay, Joe's here. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm glad that you're here. Let's start with this. Just really broad question here, Joe, but I'm just really interested in what first inspired you. Like, have you always wanted to write a novel? Is it something that you've been toying with for years? Did it just arrive as a burst of inspiration 6 months
Uh,
ago? What's the story with your writing
oh
of a
no,
book?
it has a very long backstory.
Okay,
But
okay.
so I always wanted to write a book. I,
Yep.
I always, like when I grew up, I wanted to be a novelist right from the get go. So
Really?
being a lawyer was sort of like I got a bit carried away with doing something along the way, because when we were growing up, there was this sort of expectation that it was a bit frivolous to be a
Mm,
writer. So you had to, do something worthy and income producing. So
sure.
I did that for it. It ended up being quite a long time. But I always wanted to write a book about corporate culture. And so the plot came because I thought if I write a lyrical little novel about corporate culture, the people who I wanted to read it wouldn't read it because they don't have time and tend not to, you know, read books like that, just because there's a lot of reading in the law, obviously. So I thought I need something to propel it forward. So I thought I'll just kill one of the really awful people, like invent this really horrible person and kill him.
So to hook everyone, but you studied English literature in the 80s. So
and
your
just,
idea back
it was
then.
so long ago that creative writing wasn't a thing.
Wow.
So English literature was the course that that was really the only option if you wanted to study English.
And so that whole time when you had this entire other career, can I ask how many years you were a corporate lawyer for?
They gave me my badge for getting to 30 years.
30 years.
And that wasn't at the end. Like that was quite near the end, but not at the end. So it was a very long time.
A long time, yeah. But that whole time, like the first 10 years in, you didn't then sort of toy with writing some fiction at nighttime on your computer, or is it just that you had no time at all?
I did toy with it, and I would write little pieces, but it wasn't so much. Well, it was the time, but it was also the headspace, because to put together a whole novel and all of the intricacies associated with it, and to sit down and write it actually takes a lot of space in the brain. That's why I don't understand. I really am so full of admiration for you for teaching during the day and writing at night. I just couldn't do it. I used to spend my whole day and night when I was awake at night fretting about my job.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I didn't have time for I didn't have time to write books.
Yeah, okay.
Headspace, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. I actually think, and I've got a question a bit later on, but I might jump to it very quickly. I thought there's a particular scene in the book with Viv getting her performance reviews. I thought it's one of the most compelling times I've seen the agony of those awkward performance review meetings, and she's up late worrying, oh, I should have said this, or what if I said that, and I shouldn't have done this, and I just thought you captured those late night turmoil sessions really well. So that was drawn from life a little bit.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those. Yeah, but also this whole idea that you give someone a number out of 5.
Man.
And I've been looking for another book that I'm writing about the whole Enron saga, where they had this thing called rank and yank. That was the name of their performance review process. It was rank and yank.
Wow.
And everybody sat on had to be put on a bell curve. They did it not once a year, but every 6 months, so twice a year. Right. And the bottom 10% of people all got the sack. They all got fired.
Every 6 months?
Of course, every 6 months, wow. 10% of the employees got fired.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And the top 10% got bonuses of, in the tens of millions. So you have this.
That's crazy. What a... Yeah,
I find the whole thing really a kind of odd concept that you give everybody a number and then their whole life can be decided by the outcome.
But and it kind of lends itself to that what you write about too, which is this backstabbing kind of gossipy, fudging the truth and all those sorts of things that we see going in your book. But it kind of lends itself to that sort of it's cutthroat, isn't it?
You're competing directly with the person in the office next door,
just trying to survive. Now there's a few people here, Cheryl and Stacey, who have both said recognized it in the book about the strong support of women, and I think this is a recurring theme. I think this is something that's really resonating with people. I actually read in your bio that you were also one of the first people to work part-time after having a child. Yes. In your corporate office, and then you were also the only female partner at one stage of the Brisbane office of your firm. So female empowerment and female strength is a real driving force in your work, but seems to be a driving force in your life as well. Can you talk a little bit about that particular what would you call it? Like it's quite inspiring to read. It's almost
Oh,
like
is it? Oh, good.
yeah, yeah. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's a message through the book, but I did get a very strong sense of it.
Uh, yeah, and so those two characters, well, there are three big female characters, but the two who are at the law firm, Ruth and Viv, I just wanted to. There's a woman kind of midway through her career. That's Ruth, and she comes in and sees this. Am I allowed to swear?
Yes, yes, that's fine.
She sees this shit show, which is which is this, in the context of a large firm, a
Mm.
relatively small office, where this young female partner is being relentlessly bullied and doesn't really. You can see that she just doesn't. She doesn't really understand what's going on
Yeah,
because she can feel the knives in her back, but she can't quite figure out who put them there.
yeah, and there's a
And
lot of people who
and
are very good at convincing us that they're good, but they're
yeah,
very
so
sly.
I spent a lot of time. I graduated from, as I said, I'm quite old. So I graduated from university in. I think I had my first job in 87 to 89. But I worked in a very male dominated area. So
Mm.
my area of specialty was construction and infrastructure. So
All
I
right.
used to, and look, I really enjoyed working with men. I liked them a lot. Um, there are just there's just these particular kind of alpha male who
Yeah.
can be very difficult to negotiate. And I found that a lot of my male partners had the same problem. It's just that they dealt with it in a different way. I think they kind of, maybe they figured it out a bit more in the playground, and they kind of dealt with it in a far more accepting way,
Okay.
than I did.
Yeah. Do you think that the world of sort of the world of law and the corporate lawyers and things like that that you describe in your book, is it still, do you think, would you categorize it as a big boys club sort of thing? Like, is it predominantly sort of ruled by men now, or is it changing a little bit?
It is changing. When I was made a partner in 2006, and I was the only female partner for a couple of years, and
Mm.
now they're about 50-50 in that
Wow.
office. And the
That's a
managing
big shift.
partner, the managing partner in the office, the person who's the Philip person, is this great woman who I watched grow up through the firm.
Wow.
So it is changing. And I was talking to one of the older guys who's just a little bit older than me, who's still there, and I said, "Do you think it's better?" And he said, "Oh, it's so much better." So having diversity has changed
Okay.
the vibe for everybody in the office.
Well, that's really good. That's quite
Yeah,
positive.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Um, I've got a question from Ian, which I love, which I will ask you. Ian's wondering whether Gavin is based on any former work colleagues that you.
Well, there's a in the opening part of the novel, there's a thing that I wrote. So rather than, I wanted to write something because I knew that there would be a lot of speculation from
Yeah,
my
yeah,
colleagues about who was who. It is actually completely correct to say that he is bits, like they all are. They're bits of lots of different characters, but Gavin is an amalgam of the worst aspect of quite a number of people. So there were a lot of people who went into Gavin, plus
mm,
a whole lot that I made up.
yeah.
But he's a pretty awful person, and yeah. So is he based on anyone at work? No.
No, but he's yeah, like you say, an amalgamation
Yeah.
of all those, that type of a person.
Yes.
Um, just to go back a little bit, because I want to talk very quickly about just your I guess what your reading habits are. I'm actually curious about who some of your, because this is in the realm of sort of crime thriller slash law thriller.
Yeah.
But do you have any favorite thriller writers? Is there anyone you read for inspiration? I was wondering if you'd read John Grisham at all, because he's
Yeah.
one.
I read John Grisham.
Yeah,
But back in the day when the firm was written, I
yeah,
love that. I really enjoyed Hell Has Harbour Views. Do you remember that? It came out. I was surprised to learn 20 years ago, but it was
Wow.
this fantastic. So it was sort of funny, but it
Yeah.
was about life at a big law firm, and a
Mm.
very hilarious book.
Yeah, right.
Um, so I read a lot of nonfiction actually, uh, uh, as well as fiction.
Yeah.
So I don't confine the reading to thrillers and crime, but I do think it's a cracking way to move a story along.
Yeah, it gives it a sense of urgency, a sense of you need to
Yeah.
turn the page. I actually thought you were very clever with your title because it started off and well, a client is going to die, and I'm sort of going, which client, who's going to die? And then as I grew to learn more about Gavin and he developed, I was sort of like, I hope he's the one who gets murdered. And then he was. So I thought you did a very good job with the title. The titles. Can you talk? Was that your title? Did that come from you?
It did come from me,
Wow, it's a good
but it
one.
actually was influenced by you, Ben,
What?
because well, it was sold. So just to clarify for everybody, Ben and I share an agent,
Yes.
fabulous agent, and we also share a publisher, and we
Yes.
share in particular the commissioning editor in the publisher, this
Yes.
wonderful woman called Jane Polfreman.
Jane, yeah, she's
So, um, my book was sold as, I forget what I think it was called, Gavin Jones is Dead, and then the
uh-oh.
marketing department at Allen Nummon said, we don't. A long time had progressed since the contract was sold and the book was moving along.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't like Gavin Jones is Dead. We need to get a kind of corporate vibe to it. We'd like
Yeah.
the word client in there, or some kind of indication there's a corporate vibe.
Yeah.
And so, there was a bit of workshopping, writing down a whole lot of different titles. And I think we came up with Death of a Client. And then about there, everybody went, yes, that's it, snap, we agree. And then about 2 weeks later, I got the message, oh no, the lead literary title for the month is by Ben Hobson, and it's Death of John Lacey. And people get very confused if we have those two books in bookshops, so you have to change it. So then I thought, okay. So I went back to the drawing board, and I just did lists of random collections of words that had included the word client. And then as a joke, I put in how to kill a client and sent it off in an email, and it was greeted with acclaim.
It's a look. Can I take credit for it? Like 5% of the credit?
Yes,
Thank
please
you.
do. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm very proud of this title. My 5% went along. No, it's awesome. It's really funny to hear that that's how it came because it's wonderful. Because when I picked it up, it felt like it was going to be a little bit instructional and it felt a bit naughty in its way. Like, so I was actually, I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to read a bit more. Do you mind? I want to talk about chat. Chat is going off on this book, Joanna. So I need to just mention a couple of things here.
Right.
Cheryl has said the in-depth insight into Gavin's wife was brilliant. So that's Anne.
Yeah.
Even though she wasn't in the office, but I agree. I thought Anne. There's that particular scene too, because you get this slow sense of Anne, and you get to see the way Gavin has manipulated her and set up all these little controlling things in her life. And then there's that brilliant scene where she actually summons the courage to stand up to him. And I was so sorry, Joe, by the way, everyone's read your book, so that's why I can talk about spoilers and things. Just to, yeah. But that scene where she stands up to him, I was like, that's one of those moments when you read a book that you're like, yes, the character's doing this thing. And then he just pushes her back down, and it was heartbreaking. But can you talk about creating her as a character? Because I agree, I thought she was incredibly sympathetic, and she was pushed around, but she was still strong. You know what I mean? I guess, yeah. Anyway, you talk.
Well, I think she was doing a lot to protect her two little girls, and I think that it sort of dawned on her because the person she married is different to the person that Gavin became. And I know people hate Gavin a lot, but in a way, I feel a little bit is sorry for him the right word, because he has this desperate need
Yeah.
to status. And he has and he's trying to measure himself against everybody all the time. So he's like a hamster on a wheel, going around trying to work out how he can show the world that he's more important than everybody else. And so she realizes slowly that he's put them in this position where he's spending all this money on this kind of useless stuff, like cars and
But he's
and
sort of like puffing his chest up, like, look at me, I'm cool.
And he's sort of pushing her aside because the people he wants to measure himself against are other men, so he wants to be the alphaist of alpha males. But he knows in his heart he can never be that, because he knows in his heart he's sort of wispy and insignificant.
An imposter. That's typical for most men in most careers, I think.
Yeah, and women, imposter syndrome. So, but his behaviour to her, as his frustrations, get worse, his behaviour to her deteriorates, and she finds herself in this position where she realises she has to get out and thinks, how do I do it? Because he completely controls the money.
Yeah, which is part of that coercive control and the way that men can just be a dictator absolutely over their partners, I guess, right? Like he removes all her ability to ever escape. And so I thought it was pretty remarkable where she actually did manage to call Charlie. I think sadly that's not something that a lot of women manage to escape. I mean, it's pretty terrible situation. Yeah.
Terrible situation. Yeah.
So I'm pretty glad that she called Charlie.
Yeah.
Yes, and the mother. Yeah. Moira.
Yeah, the mother.
Moira.
Yes.
Yeah, Moira. Judy has asked me, I am a teacher. I teach English and music, year 10s, 12s, and 9s this year, but I teach all high school, which I'll be doing tomorrow. Very excited to go back to work after a nice Anzac Day. This is a great question from Michelle. I had a very similar question myself, Michelle. There were so many, brackets. Spoiler warning, if you haven't finished the book, we are going to be talking about potentially the ending and things. So please, if you haven't read, just block your ears or hit mute or whatever you like, okay? But Michelle has asked, there were so many potential murderers and red herrings. So the question she has, and I had the same one, did you actually know who was guilty right from the start? Did you know who
these are such excellent questions.
I know, aren't they good?
So originally, I could give the long answer to this question or the short answer, originally, have you read Patricia Highsmith's book? So when you talk about writers I really admire, Patricia Highsmith is right up there. She wrote the Ripley novels.
I haven't read them.
The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, okay, sure.
Novels where she gets inside the mindset of the baddie and follows them, the person who done it, and follows them through the thinking, and so you get you completely empathize with them, and then sort of recoil in horror at your empathy for this as you realize what they're doing. And so originally the book was Viv murdering Gavin. And going through but then I sent it off to an agent who was interested in it, and she told me that it was immoral. I thought, and she actually said,
that's funny.
Yeah,
did you feel, am I immoral? Oh no.
Well, that's what she was ringing me up, I think, to test whether I was, how wicked I was, and whether I thought it was immoral.
I've never heard such a thing.
So then I changed it, and then it was Philip. And then in the last edit, so I had all of those chapters from the point of view of Philip.
Yes.
And then in the last edit, my wonderful editor, Krista, said to me, Ali Laval said to me, look, it's a bit obvious that, I can see Philip coming. I suggest what you should do is take out his point of view to hide the fact that he's done the murder. And I
Yeah.
thought, I don't want to take out his point of view. I thought about it for a long time. I thought, I don't want to take out his point of view. I'll just change the murderer. So it was at that point that it became, we're completely on a spoiler alert here, but it was at that point that we had that scene where Craig was the person who did it. Because to me, I didn't write the book, the book wasn't really about a puzzle. The book was to talk about what the culture's like in corporate law firms. So it didn't matter to me who did it. But
That's interesting. And then it sort of became more important to you as you developed the story a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I actually wondered that because it did feel like I thought it was going to be Philip. It was leading up to Philip. And then you sort of gave me the answer, but then you did this twist on what I was expecting. I was like, oh, damn, like she got me. Yeah.
Yeah, someone, the best review I've ever had was 3 words long, and it said cool and twisty.
That is good. Put that on the cover of the next one, I reckon.
Yeah.
So Vicky has asked, this can be a quick answer if you prefer, or you can talk at length about it, but how do you actually track your storylines, and how do you know, I've serviced this character too long, I need to peek back into this one? Do you have cards? Do you have a spreadsheet? What do you do?
I've done all of those things. It's actually, I find it really hard. I did lots and lots and lots of drafts.
Mm.
The one thing I really like is Scrivener, which is this software, because I used to do it in Word, but it's this software where you can just do it, break it up by scenes and characters, and it has a sort of like a you can convert it into a corkboard where, with post-it notes, on the screen.
Yeah.
It is. I found it really tricky, and used to spend a lot of time kind of puzzling it out and working out how it would all fit together.
100%. Yeah, I can sympathize. There is a little bit of a discussion happening in our chat, which I'll just bring to your attention about whether or not Gavin is, because I think you said you felt sorry for him a little bit, and there's a bit of a distinction between having sympathy, or maybe not even sympathy, but sort of understanding a person.
Yes.
And then not actually being okay with what they do. So and still saying like what he did was terrible. Trish, I think Trish Dwyer said it really well. I did understand him, but could not excuse his behavior. And it was an interesting example of a form of coercive control.
Yes.
Which now actually has a name, which is good, which we can explain it a little bit. But many people are mentioning the one of the worst sins that a human being can commit in a book was committed by Gavin, which was the killing of the dog. When did that come into the book? And it did. I think a lot of people are saying, I'm out. Like, I cannot forgive. It's funny, hey, as readers.
So I should say when I say I feel sorry for Gavin.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not excusing. He's a terrible, terrible, terrible person.
Yes.
And I guess you're right. It's more about seeing what makes him tick.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I don't think it's useful to say these people are monsters and we should just brand them all as evil. It's more worthwhile, I think, like what you do in your book is where we can go, I can see what's making him tick.
And I can see where he's gone so terribly wrong. It's such a simple thing.
Yes.
To completely get your values completely messed up.
Absolutely.
So, I guess feeling sorry for him, that's possibly the wrong.
No, I understand,
the dog thing. Originally, that became a bigger scene during the editing process.
Yeah.
The dog was first of all a cat, and then it was only mentioned in passing.
Yeah.
And then, I think you could say a book is an emotion delivery system. And so the suggestion was made that we deal with that scene in a bit more detail. And I do get a lot of feedback about the book. Like people get quite upset about it.
Yes. It's
and I apologise for that.
No, it's good.
It demonstrates, because he kind of is so lacking in control.
Yes, that's it. Yes, so impulsive with his emotions.
Yeah,
and then it's the lack of remorse too. It's the lack of
remorse.
He then blames and he blames the kids. You didn't train the dog. It's not my fault.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
just nudging it, like, and just, made him even worse, more despicable.
yeah. He is despicable. Yeah,
It is interesting too that it's in fiction that we tend to feel, I think we do, we tend to feel more outrage when a pet is murdered than when a human being is murdered, which is an interesting thing in human psychology. I think it's something to do with because pets are innocent, right? And humans are culpable. I don't know what it is. I've
yeah,
I've
yeah,
had
yeah. Especially yeah, that's right. A puppy. Yeah,
a puppy, a cute little puppy. I
yeah,
actually had the same thing with my first book, To Become a Whale, which was set on the whaling station at Tangalooma. That had a lot of people say they couldn't read it when the whales were, flensed and all the graphic.
yeah,
It's pretty horrible stuff.
yeah. It
And
is.
Brand is mentioning it's how John Wick started. John Wick has killed about 900 people now, and we're all like this because of the dog murder at the start of the first one, right, Brant? Yes, agreed. Um, that's funny. Let's see. I would like to talk very quickly about how did you go? I want to talk about this. What is the difference to you, Joanna? Because you've sort of had this one career and then you've pivoted into a completely different career, which you seem to be very successful at both things, which is wonderful. You must be a very talented person in general. But my question is there much difference between the setting of a corporate law firm versus the world of being an author? Where are the
Yes, very,
differences? Where are the
very,
similarities?
very different.
What
People are different. It's much more alone. Like you do spend a lot of time alone, which I quite like. But I also do need to get out more. So I tend not to socialise as much as I should. Uh, so it's a there's no so you have to make yourself sit down. There's no structure to the day, so you
Yeah.
have to make yourself impose the structure on the day. And I probably all those years of going off to work has made me do that.
Yeah.
But also now, if I just reach a point where I can't, where I reach a point where I can't write anymore just because there's a block or something, I just take the dog for a walk. That's quite nice.
Yeah, isn't that
I have to
nice?
say, if you compared the two jobs and gave them each a mark out of 5,
Yeah.
if you did a performance appraisal,
Yes, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's fair to say being a writer would rate significantly higher than being a lawyer.
And is there as much in the way of sort of being cutthroat? Do you find that to be true, or because my experience of being an author when I first sort of entered this world is that most authors are very giving and generous. I didn't
Yeah,
find.
yes, yeah. It's a very kind, friendly, generous community, and I do need to get out more and people. But no, it is. They're lovely people.
I agree. I agree.
And it doesn't seem, I mean, I hear that it's competitive sometimes, but I haven't experienced any of that.
No, me either. I haven't experienced any of that either yet. Um, I did say yet. Maybe I should just say I haven't experienced anything either and full stop. Not yet. Vicky has asked, or didn't ask, she said, the warehouse scene had me holding my breath. And so there are a few scenes in this book that are very, and the scene I think between Gavin and Anne as well. The scene where the detective is coming in and questioning Viv and things like that. Like you do hold tension really well on the page. Is there a trick to that? Is there something that you focused on? How did you do that?
I think I so that agent who told me that I was immoral, was worried about the morality of it, who I might say then said, gave me some directions to rewrite the book. I then spent 4 months rewriting it, and then she said, "Oh no," and so then it took me another 2 years after that to sell. Sorry, what was the
Wow,
question again?
that's
I got
funny
just.
how that works.
Oh yeah, so she said show don't tell, that old thing. And I was thinking, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, how will I do that? So I would when writing a scene, I'd be in a particular point of view, and I'd be like inside the person's head and in my mind looking through their eyes and feeling what they feel. So I would try and immerse themselves in the brain of that character.
Yeah.
And I, and so if they were feeling anxious about something, then that I hope that came through.
Yeah, it did, absolutely.
Because you're feeling what they feel.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's pretty accurate. I want to read this comment from Jane, which I really appreciate. I think there's actually a few people in the club tonight who have been inspired by you. And I think there's a few young or old writers in the chat as well who are wanting to plumb your brain for how to do this. But Jane has said it's beyond marvelous that you have come through such a tough journey and come out the other end to land in your own headspace and to share your creative ability with the rest of us. You inspire me to write my book. So she says, thank you. Is that?
Oh, that's lovely. And I should say, people ask me for advice about what they should do to start a career. So it took me a long time to sell this book.
Yeah.
And, as I said, there were many drafts of it. And in fact, I'd given up on it. So I would give two pieces of advice. One is write because you want to write. Don't write to get published. Because if your whole focus is on getting published and your whole sense of happiness and fulfillment is about getting published, you're going to miss out on the journey, which is the best part, is learning how to write.
That is very good advice.
And I've forgotten what the second piece was. But it was really good.
That's tantalizing. Really good. Did you do that on purpose?
Oh, no, that's right. The second piece is find out how to write a pitch email. And if you've got a friend who's a journalist, because these are the people who taught me in the end, try and work out how to put together the pitch email, because it's those 5 lines that are the thing that are going to attract the attention of the agent. Absolutely. Of course, you have to write a really good manuscript, but the pitch email has to be a cracker.
It's its own separate kind of art, really, isn't it? The pitch.
Yeah, and you only have to do it. You only have to succeed once. Like, I got a lot of rejections, I might tell you, a lot, and I got a lot of non-responses.
Me too.
But once you've had one pitch accepted, and then you've got through to publication, you never have to write another one.
I always say it just requires one champion. You find one champion who can knock on the right door for you.
Yeah.
Really all you need. And it's just very hard to find that alignment between what you love and what you've done versus a person who's going to love the same thing. Once you find that, then you're sort of set on your path. Tina has asked, now that you actually have your first novel out, what are you planning or are doing differently with the writing of your second? Is there anything that you've changed in your process at all? Which is, I think, a very interesting question.
Well, at the moment, I'm a bit stuck on my second novel. so change in process. I use Scrivener. I suppose I know that I can write 94,000 words and it will make sense. But I also worry, how there's a problem with the second novel. I really worry. I just think, oh God, it's never going to be as good as
man. Can I tell you my trick that I did, which I haven't followed since, but I was pretty pleased with myself. The first book was coming out and I had 6 months between when the edits were locked and then when it came out. And I wrote a whole other book in those 6 months. And so then when it came out, I had a book and I just went back and fixed it up, and it was a lot easier that way. But I haven't recreated that since then. But it's tough.
I do have a book, but I'm just working to make it better.
Yes, that's the real work. It's the first draft is one thing, but then the refinement is a whole other thing. Yeah. Jane has said rejections. Wow, Ben, didn't you get rejections? Yes.
character building.
9 to 10 years, I got rejections. I still get rejections now. Still. I'm not invited to all the writers' festivals. And it's the thing with being a successful creative person, I think, is that you have to really set your own goalposts and don't compare yourself to other people. That's because I would watch other people get published. Sorry, say that again.
What was Gavin's problem?
Oh,
Secret of life.
You're brilliant at these interviews. You've brought it back to the book. This is great. Yes, you're right. He did. He compared himself, and then he was trying, and then he felt inadequate and he felt less than. One way to deal with rejections is to simply focus on doing your thing. Like you're saying, Joe, right? Like the creative process and the joy of the actual thing you're doing is the magic of it. The other stuff's sort of ongoing, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm just getting a lot of questions from the chat tonight. Everyone's very excited to talk to you, Joe, which is awesome. Very quickly, I will just type into the chat box. If anyone's interested and this is your first time with Ben's Book Club, I just posted the Facebook group that we use. So you can keep up to date. So every month we do a new book. So if you're interested in coming and joining that, joining us every month and reading a book with us every month, you can join that Facebook group to sort of keep up to date. Let's go through and have a look at a couple of the questions here. I think these are really cool. This one's interesting. So Michelle's asked this. So Joe, do publishers use test readers or do they just rely on their own opinion? And then she said, I can't believe agents rejected this book in its initial form. So what's your experience with that?
I think agents have a very, very full inboxes.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to stand out, which, the pitch email is so important. Sorry, I've done it again. What was the question?
The question was, I guess talk about the process maybe of what it was like to have your book rejected and then coming back to it and reworking it, I guess.
It was dispiriting and soul destroying.
Oh, isn't it? Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad
really
we're
not. I do remember what the question was. Were there test readers? No. I think in the case of both Gabby, our agent, and Jane, our publisher. When I say our, I mean Ben and I share. We're in two stables, and so we share both those stables.
And Ali, actually,
they read their own. They read their own work. It was Jane who read the manuscript that Gabby submitted to her, but she probably uses the agents as a sort of sorting hat, I suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So publisher has a slush pile. They'll have, 20,000 manuscripts on this big pile over years. But an agent is sort of a bit of a barometer for quality, and they'll almost exclusively sometimes rely on agents. And so Gabby reads a lot of books, a lot of manuscripts.
Yeah.
I think it must be a lot of hard work to sort of sort through and look
absolutely.
at. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, Joe, but even my book that was accepted, it still required a bit of work. Like it still wasn't, it's almost like Gabby saw the heart and the potential of it more than the actual thing. Would you agree with that was the same with you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think a good agent is gold. And they must be gold not just to the writer, but also to the commissioning editor at the publisher.
Yeah, 100%. Especially when you get that trust sort of relationship back and forth.
Yeah.
Can I ask some quick writing habit questions of you, Joe? Where do you write? How do you write? Do you focus on word count per day? Do you have a cigarette, or I don't know? Does the sunlight hit you perfectly through a Venetian blind?
No. I said I've actually colonized the dining room.
Okay.
It's a bit of a mess. So it's in the middle of the house. So if anybody comes over, I have to kind of quickly shove it away in a different room.
Yeah.
And my husband is very patient about that. I try. So one of the advantages of being a lawyer is that I used to write these door stopper contracts, and so I I suppose that job gave me the discipline to just sit down and write, like have a kind of picture in my mind of where it was going, and then sit down and write. And so if I'm doing the first draft, I will try and do maybe 3,000 words a day, but I never, some days I might make 3,000, but a lot of days I don't.
That's a lot, though. That's a big chunk.
Yeah. But I rarely make it. And then I try to, get together a draft and then start puzzling, because especially with crime, there's the writing, but then there's also the puzzle, making sure it all fits together. And then I guess I'm doing that while I'm writing, so that I know which is the next scene to write. But then I can't have to come back to it, and there's a lot of editing, a lot.
Yeah. It's a messy. It's not a straight process. Hey, I think sometimes it's people picture writing like you're designing a bridge, and so you have a blueprint and you have engineers and you figure it all out and then you build the bridge. But it's more like you're building a bridge while you're on the bridge and everything's collapsing around you, and you have to figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah. I'd like to go back to talk about the book a little bit again. The relationship that I found to be really moving, I actually thought, was Rob and Viv. I thought that Rob was a very supportive husband, and I guess Charlie and Ruth as well in the end, so it had a spark going on. But was that important to you as well in this world of Philip and Gavin and these men who are cutthroat and manipulative and misogynists? Was it important to have some good men in your book as well?
Very important, because I work with a lot of men, and I love working with them, but I know a lot of very good men. So, and I have 3 sons. Yeah, it was very important to make have really lovely good men.
Yeah, and I think you really succeeded with that. And it's actually, I think, sadly, very rare to see a functional, supportive, complex relationship between like marriage partners in crime and thriller writing. They tend to be very unstable, or the person's so drawn into pursuing the investigation, they'll forget about they have a marriage to tend to, and so it's very nice. I think you and Danuka Mackenzie, whose book came out at the same time as yours, she has a similar thing where you actually have good marriages. It's actually really refreshing. I also found that Viv, there was this really interesting scene where I've got my notes here, but I'm trying to remember the scene. But she was asked to say something. Someone said something complimentary about her, and she wanted to agree, but there was something in her that wouldn't allow her to do that. And
that's a Sheila thing.
So I wanted to ask about that.
Time. Yeah.
And so so that's something that women do all the time. What would you say that sorry, say that again?
Conditioned, I think, as children to be self-deprecating and not big note ourselves. It's
to sort of be
very unattractive. It's a very unattractive trait in a woman. So if you have a woman who behaves in a way, in exactly the same way as a man might, she's considered to be boastful and arrogant and pushy. There's these loaded words.
I thought it was really interesting.
Ambitious is a loaded word when it comes to a woman. So ambitious, selfish. That Jane has said selfish. That's right.
Not a good mother. You actually had scenes like that as well, right? Where the other mums were sort of looking at her. She doesn't know what's going on at the football club and things like that. That's sort of the same package.
Yeah, and then in that final scene, which I must say I had great satisfaction writing, where she said she wasn't going to swear, not in front of the children, because from now on, in the pursuit of perfection, she was going to be a fucking good mother.
I loved it. Can I say?
I laugh every time I read.
No, it's great. You have a real ability with that turn of phrase. The whole tone of the book is very. How do I phrase this? It's just it's down to earth, and it feels like you're telling me a tale. Like there's a yarn that a regular person is telling me this tale, and you've really captured the way people, I think, really do speak and really do think about things. Um, I was a bit jealous of that, honestly. I guess that's all I'm saying.
Well, you've written a magnificent book, Ben. So.
Thank you, thank you. But you know what I mean? Like I can't do that. I can't. You have this ability to, with your words, to make it sound, yeah, just like it was my mates talking to me. And it's rare to read that in fiction where it doesn't feel fake or put on. Like it just felt really authentic, I guess, Joe.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, which I really
A
loved.
lot of people say to me they can hear me talking to them. So
Yeah, that's an art. That's quite hard to do.
is it? Oh, oh.
Um, we're nearly out of time here, guys. So if there's any more questions that you have, I can see I'm still going through your questions. We love Joe, don't we? We need to have you back again, I think, Joe, because we've sort of
Yeah, it's
picking your
great fun. I
brains.
like it. It's good.
Let's read this one. Ranjana has said, Joanna, your writing oozes credibility through your corporate and legal experience. 100%. I haven't even mentioned that yet. Just how, like, the performance reviews and the way that the partnerships worked and the way that one person would be. Oh, the scene. Sorry, I forget the character's name. Who's Bill passes away. That's Ruth.
Her husband,
Yeah, Ruth. Is that Ruth? Who's
yeah,
Bill passes
on the
away.
bicycle, yeah.
Yeah, and then she gets trucked off. No, there was another character whose husband passed away, and then she was sort of set up with this ceremony, and they sort of gave her a stipend, and well, we're all so sorry for you, but then they fired her. All that stuff just
Oh
oozed.
yeah, no, yeah. Sorry, she was the single mother with cancer.
That's it. Oh
Yeah,
my.
it was about the brutality of law firms. Yeah,
Yeah, but all that stuff just felt really authentic, and it felt like I'd entered a world that I hadn't seen before. Did that come easy for you because of your
yes, because
experience?
yes, because I'd been in those partners meetings. I had my partners, my male partners, when they started reading the book after it came out, and they give me text message updates. They'd say, "Oh, I'm reading the chapter about the meeting. I've got PTSD. Just read."
That's funny. That
Yeah.
means you've done well, right? It means you've hit the nail on the head with it, clearly.
Well, hopefully, yes.
I think so. Can I ask, and you feel free to avoid this question if you don't want to talk about it, but I'm wondering, just to sort of finish up a little bit, what is your next book? Are we allowed to know anything? Any sort of ideas or
Well, so it's Ruth and Roscoe and um,
Ruth's coming
they,
back?
yeah. So their law firm has collapsed.
Ah, can I
And,
say, I was worried, Joe, that this was going to be like a one-off and then it was going to move on, but we've got Ruth coming back. I'm so
yeah, and she does a locum in a country town. So they moved to the country, like the law firm has collapsed. It's pretty bad, and so they end up in this country town, and she's there just because um, she's his mate, really, and she's also a bit lost. So she does a locum, and the idea of a corporate lawyer doing a locum in a country town, like so they could, she could have just as well, she would know just as much about being the GP, the doctor, with the kind of areas of law that she would have to brush up on really quickly. So yeah, so and
I'm
then
excited to
and
read
then
it.
a girl goes missing.
Oh, okay. I don't know whether you can see the chat here, Joe, but everyone's very excited to see Ruth come back. Um, what are you going to call it? Like, if it's set in a country town, is it how to cheer your football team? How to, like, I'm trying to think of country things. How to,
I hadn't gone with the how-to thing, but maybe
no,
that's
no,
because I am struggling with the title.
they're
Gabby
hard.
doesn't like the title that I came up with, so I am
Gabby doesn't
struggling.
like any titles, Joe. Don't feel bad. It's not just you. I haven't. I got one past her, one, and every time I'm like, "This is it. That's so good," and then she says, "Not there," and she's so blunt, and I'm like, "Oh
Yeah,
damn!" And then I look back, and I'm like, "Oh, she's so right too." Um, yeah, titles are tricky.
yeah,
Um,
and so important. Yeah.
but I think everyone is
What was
extremely
that?
excited.
How to dog a kangaroo?
How to dodge a kangaroo. That's
Dodge
wonderful.
a kangaroo.
Sorry, who was that? Was that Brant? Again?
I
No,
don't know
that's
who that was.
Chris.
It's
When
very
Chris,
funny.
okay, so when when this book comes out, Chris, with this title with Joe's name on it, you can look back on this and you can take a bit of credit, I think, because I think you might steal that one, Joe, huh?
Yeah, how to dodge a kangaroo. I'm gonna. I will have to write a new scene, but yeah, actually,
I love this book club. It's so fun. Cool. I think that's all we have time for today. I know we're finishing a little early. Are there any other questions? I'm actually out of questions. Sorry, Jane. I know Jane's very upset that you're going. Joe, here's a question for you, actually. I've thought of one. Is there or are there any questions at all about your novel and your writing that you want to be asked, but no interviewer has thought to ask you yet?
God.
See, I'm being tricky here.
Well, someone did ask me, what snacks do I eat when I'm writing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to answer that. Uh, uh, no, I can't think of a question that I want to be asked. I do prefer as a format rather than giving a speech where I have to prepare something. I do like this format where people talk to you because you know then that you can build up the rapport with the audience much better, so you know that you're delivering what they want to hear, as opposed to giving a speech where you're kind of looking at them thinking, am I hitting the nail on the head? So I like the unexpected questions.
Okay. I'll have to try to think of some for the next time I talk to you, which I
mean, I like the conversation where you're asking the questions that you want to hear is probably so.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't have any expectations about the questions that I'll get.
That's actually, and it's, I guess, something special with this format too is that it's really giving a mic to the audience, which is really cool.
This chat. It's great.
Yeah, we've got a good club here. But yeah, thank you, Joe, so much for being a part of Ben's book club, and we will have you back for your next one if that's okay.
Lovely, thank you.
So
my next one, how to dodge a kangaroo.
How to dodge a kangaroo. When How to Dodge a Kangaroo comes out, we'll have you back, and we might have Chris be co-host as well to unpack the title. So next month, everybody, just so you're aware, we are going to be looking at Michael Thompson's How to Be Remembered, which I haven't started yet, so I'm excited for that one. So for those of you who are new to the club, every month on the app, see if I can pull up my app here. Every month on the app, you can download the book through local libraries. It's a little Libby app. But you'll be able to download Michael's book non-exclusively next month. So that is How to Be Remembered by Michael Thompson. But if you join the Facebook group, which I'll pop in the chat again, if you join that Facebook group, I send links out to all the events and things like that every month, and we have a cool chat about books and things like that. But yeah, Joe, you've been awesome. This has been a really fun chat. Every time I do this, I just get re-energized for
very lovely.
talking about books and writing. Yeah, but thank you so much, and
thank
you, everyone. Sorry?
Yeah, you're so good at it.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I hope so, Joe. But thank you very much. Can I actually very quickly, have you got any sort of live events coming up, Joe, that you're doing where people could actually come and meet and greet and get a book signed?
I do, but there's sort of events for particular organisations. If you're a Brisbane women's lawyer, there's one at Sage Restaurant.
Okay.
Next week for women's lawyers.
People can follow you on social medias and stuff, though, and you'll probably send things out about stuff.
Yeah.
All right, go follow Joe on social networking things, please. All right, thank you so much, Joe, and thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you guys next month. Bye.
Thanks, Ben. See you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
See you. Bye.